I can't believe I actually thought you loved me. Elena Vasquez stared at her phone screen, the voice memo still playing on repeat in her mind, even though she'd stopped it 3 minutes ago. Her hands trembled as she sat on the edge of the hotel bed, her wedding dress hanging pristine and untouched behind her. A beautiful lie waiting for tomorrow's ceremony. The memo had been meant for someone else. Adrian's assistant, probably. Or his lawyer. It didn't matter who. What mattered was that in 18 hours, she was supposed to walk down an aisle lined with white roses and promise her life to a man who had just unknowingly confessed to destroying hers. Elena, sweetheart, the final dress fitting is in 20 minutes. Her mother's voice echoed from the hallway, followed by the rapid clicking of designer heels. The seamstress is already here. She couldn't move. The phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in her palm. Adrian's voice had been so casual, so matter-of-fact as he spoke those words that would haunt her forever. He'd probably been walking to his car, or sitting in his office overlooking the city, completely unaware that he was about to destroy the only real thing he'd ever claimed to have. The Vasquez situation is handled perfectly, his voice had said in that recording. She has no idea about the contract her father signed before he died. By tomorrow night, everything Elena inherited will legally transfer to me through the marriage. The property, the art collection, even the pharmaceutical patents, all of it becomes mine. She thinks it's love, but it's just the most profitable acquisition I've ever made. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The pharmaceutical patents. She'd never told Adrian about those. Her father had been a brilliant chemist who'd developed several groundbreaking treatments before his death 5 years ago. She'd kept the patents private, never even mentioning them during their 2-year relationship. How could Adrian possibly know about them? A soft knock interrupted her spiral. Elena? Everything okay in there? It was her best friend Sarah, the maid of honor who'd flown in from Portland just to be here. I'm fine, Elena managed, though her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. Just pre-wedding nerves. But she wasn't fine. She was drowning. The man she'd fallen in love with, the man who'd proposed to her under the stars in Napa Valley, who'd held her while she cried about missing her father, who'd whispered promises about building a future together. That man didn't exist. He never had. The voice memo had continued for another minute, but she'd barely processed the rest. Something about offshore accounts, about timing the asset transfer perfectly, about how her sentimental attachment to her father's work would make the transition smoother. Adrian had even laughed, actually laughed, when he mentioned how she'd probably never question why he wanted such a quick engagement. 6 months. They'd been engaged for 6 months, and she'd thought it was romantic that he wanted to marry her so soon. When you know, he'd said, spinning her around in his penthouse after she'd said yes. She'd been so blinded by love, so grateful that someone like Adrian Cross, brilliant, successful, and possibly handsome, had chosen her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, my beautiful bride. You're going to change my life forever. Red heart. The heart emoji felt like a knife twisting in her chest. He was right about one thing. Tomorrow would change his life forever. Just not the way he expected. Elena stood up slowly, her legs unsteady. Through the hotel room window, she could see the venue across the street where tomorrow's reception was supposed to happen. 500 guests. A 10-piece orchestra. Flowers that had cost more than most people's cars. All of it built on a foundation of lies so elaborate that she was still trying to understand the scope of Adrian's deception. But one thing was becoming crystal clear as she stared at that venue. Adrian Cross had made one fatal mistake. He'd underestimated her. The girl who would have walked down that aisle tomorrow, naive, trusting, desperately in love. That girl died the moment she heard his voice saying those words. And the woman standing in her place was someone Adrian had never met before. Someone who wasn't going to be anyone's profitable acquisition. Elena picked up her phone and scrolled to Adrian's contact information. Her finger hovered over the call button for a long moment. When she finally pressed it, she realized she was smiling for the first time in hours. Not a happy smile, something sharper, more dangerous. Elena! Adrian's voice was warm, completely unsuspecting. I was just thinking about you. Tomorrow can't come soon enough. Actually, Adrian, she said, her voice steadier than she'd expected. I think tomorrow might be full of surprises. Adrian's laugh echoed through the phone, rich and confident. Surprises? I love the way your mind works, beautiful. Are you planning something special for our wedding night? Elena closed her eyes, remembering when that laugh used to make her heart race with joy instead of revulsion. Something like that. I can't wait. Listen, I'm in back-to-back meetings until late tonight, but I'll see you at the altar tomorrow. Sweet dreams, future Mrs. Cross. The line went dead, and Elena stared at her reflection in the hotel mirror. Mrs. Cross. She'd practiced signing that name dozens of times, doodling it in margins during boring work meetings, imagining how it would look on business cards and Christmas cards and their children's school forms. Another lie she'd built her future around. A sharper knock came at the door. Elena Vasquez, if you don't come out right now, I'm calling hotel security. Her mother's voice carried that particular brand of panic that only came with high-stakes events and potential social embarrassment. Coming, Mom, Elena called back, quickly sliding the phone into her purse. She needed to act normal for now, at least until she figured out exactly what Adrian's plan entailed and how deep this betrayal went. She opened the door to find her mother, Carmen Vasquez, standing with her hands on her hips in full wedding coordination mode. At 58, Carmen still looked like the beauty queen she'd been in her 20s, but with an edge that came from 20 years of running her own successful interior design firm. Mija, you look pale. Are you eating enough? I told you this crash diet was ridiculous. Adrian loves you exactly as you are. Carmen bustled into the room, followed by Sarah and a nervous-looking woman with a sewing kit. I'm fine, Mom. Just tired. Elena forced a smile as the seamstress began fussing over her dress. Each adjustment felt like a betrayal of herself, like she was being fitted for her own funeral shroud. Sarah studied her with those sharp green eyes that had been seeing through Elena's lies since they were roommates at Stanford. You sure? You've been weird all week. Ever since you came back from that business trip with Adrian. The business trip. Elena's stomach clenched. 3 weeks ago, Adrian had invited her to accompany him to San Francisco for what he'd called a boring pharmaceutical conference. She'd been thrilled that he wanted her there, that he was finally starting to include her in his work life. Now she wondered what the real purpose of that trip had been. I met some interesting people there, Elena said carefully, watching her mother direct the seamstress. People who knew Dad's work. It was true. She'd been standing alone at the conference cocktail party while Adrian networked, when an older woman had approached her. Dr. Margaret Chun, a researcher who'd worked with Elena's father, Dr. Roberto Vasquez, at the pharmaceutical company where he'd developed his patents. You look just like your father, Dr. Chun had said, her eyes soft with memory. Roberto was brilliant. Those patents he developed before he died, they're worth millions now. Maybe tens of millions. The cancer treatment protocols especially. He always said he was saving them for something special. Elena had been surprised. Her father had never talked about the financial value of his work. He'd always presented it as pure research, driven by his desire to help people. After his sudden heart attack 5 years ago, she'd inherited everything, but she'd never thought to investigate the commercial potential of his patents. Elena. Sarah's voice snapped her back to the present. I asked if you wanted to grab dinner after this fitting. You know, last meal as a single woman and all that. Actually, Elena said slowly, an idea beginning to form. I need to make a phone call first. Someone I haven't talked to in a while. Her mother looked up from where she was examining the dress hem. Not Adrian, I hope. It's bad luck for the groom too. Not Adrian. Elena's voice came out sharper than she intended. Both women looked at her with concern. Elena, what's wrong? Sarah moved closer, lowering her voice. You've been acting strange all week. And don't tell me it's wedding nerves, because I know you. This is something else. For a moment, Elena considered telling Sarah everything. They'd been best friends for over a decade, through college heartbreaks and career changes and family disasters. Sarah was the one person who would believe her, who would help her figure out what to do next. But she also knew Sarah well enough to know that her friend would immediately want to confront Adrian, to demand explanations, to fight for Elena's happiness with the same fierce loyalty that had gotten them both through their worst moments. And right now, Elena needed time to think, to plan, to understand exactly what she was up against before she made any moves. I'm okay, she lied. Just overwhelmed by all of this. She gestured around the room, at the dress and the flowers and the wedding planner's timeline taped to the mirror. It's a lot. Carmen softened immediately. Oh, Mija. It's natural to feel nervous. Marriage is a big step. But Adrian adores you, and you two are perfect together. Tomorrow is going to be the happiest day of your life. The irony was almost unbearable. Elena nodded and smiled and let the seamstress pin and adjust and perfect the dress that would never be worn. But her mind was racing, pieces of a puzzle finally starting to click into place. 6 months ago, when Adrian had first asked her out, she'd been genuinely surprised. They'd met at a charity gala for childhood cancer research, an event she'd only attended because her father's former research partner had insisted she come. Adrian had been the keynote speaker, talking about cross-industries' commitment to funding medical research. He'd approached her during the auction, charming and attentive, asking thoughtful questions about her work as a freelance science writer. When he'd discovered that her father had been a pharmaceutical researcher, his interest had seemed to intensify. At the time, she'd thought it was because they had something in common. Both of them had lost parents young. Both understood the drive to make the world better. Now she wondered if his interest had been entirely professional. "Elena," the seamstress was looking at her expectantly. "Could you turn to the left, please?" She turned, catching sight of herself in the full-length mirror. The dress was beautiful, Italian silk, hand-beaded bodice, a train that would flow behind her like water. Adrian had insisted on paying for it, despite her mother's protests about family tradition. "I want to give you everything," he'd said when she'd tried to argue. "Let me spoil you." Spoil her. The word took on a different meaning now. "All finished," the seamstress announced, stepping back with satisfaction. "You look absolutely radiant, Miss Vasquez." Elena stared at her reflection. She did look radiant, in a ghostly sort of way, like a beautiful corpse dressed for burial. "Thank you," she managed. "It's perfect." As the seamstress packed up her supplies and Carmen began discussing final timeline details with the wedding planner, Elena's phone buzzed with a text. Not from Adrian this time, but from a number she didn't recognize. "Saw the engagement announcement in the paper. Congratulations. Your father would be proud. If you ever want to discuss his research, I'd be happy to help. Dr. Margaret Chen." Elena stared at the message, her heart pounding. Dr. Chen had somehow found her number and was reaching out the night before her wedding. That couldn't be a coincidence. She quickly typed back, "Thank you. I'd love to discuss his work. Are you available to talk tonight?" The response came immediately. "Yes. This is important, Elena. More important than you know. Can you meet me at the Meridian Hotel bar at 8 p.m.? Come alone." Elena glanced at the clock. It was already past 7. She had less than an hour to get there, and she still needed to get through dinner with her mother and Sarah without arousing suspicion. "Mom," she said suddenly, "I just remembered I promised to call Adrian's grandmother before the wedding. She's elderly and goes to bed early. Would it be okay if we postpone dinner until tomorrow? After the ceremony?" Carmen looked disappointed but nodded. "Of course, Mija. Family comes first. Sarah and I can grab something together, can't we, Sarah?" Sarah was still studying Elena with that look that meant she wasn't buying any of this, but she nodded. "Sure. But Elena, if you need anything." "I know." Elena hugged her friend, holding on perhaps a moment too long. "Thank you. For everything." 20 minutes later, Elena stood outside the Meridian Hotel, her heart racing as she tried to prepare herself for whatever Dr. Chen was about to tell her. The voice memo had shattered her understanding of Adrian's feelings for her, but she had the growing suspicion that his betrayal went deeper than just using her for her inheritance. As she walked into the hotel bar, scanning the dimly lit space for Dr. Chen, Elena realized that the naive woman who had fallen in love with Adrian Cross was disappearing more completely with each passing hour. In her place was someone harder, more suspicious, more dangerous. Someone who was about to discover that her father's death might not have been as natural as everyone believed. Dr. Chen waved from a corner booth, her expression grave. As Elena approached, she noticed that the older woman's hands were trembling slightly around her wine glass. "Thank you for coming," Dr. Chen said as Elena slid into the booth across from her. "I wasn't sure if you would. Your message made it sound urgent." "It is." Dr. Chen leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Elena, I need to tell you something about your father's death. Something I should have told you years ago." Elena felt the world tilt slightly. "What do you mean?" "Your father didn't die of a heart attack," Dr. Chen said quietly. "He was murdered. And I think your fiancé knows exactly who killed him." The wine glass slipped from Elena's hand, shattering against the table. Dark red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. "That's impossible," she whispered. "He had a heart attack. I was there. I saw. You saw what they wanted you to see." Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "Elena, your father called me the night before he died. He was terrified. He discovered that someone was trying to steal his research. Not just copy it, but literally forge documents to transfer ownership of his patents. The bar suddenly felt too small, too warm. Elena pressed her hands against the table to steady herself. Who? Who was trying to steal them? A company called Meridian Acquisitions. It's a shell corporation, but Roberto traced the ownership back to a larger firm. Dr. Chen paused, watching Elena's face carefully. Cross Industries. The name hit Elena like a physical blow. Adrian's company. But that was impossible. 5 years ago, Adrian would have been just starting his business empire. She'd met him only 18 months ago. How could he have been involved in her father's death before they'd even known each other existed? You're saying Adrian killed my father? The words felt surreal leaving her mouth. Not Adrian directly. Roberto died in 2019, and according to my research, Adrian Cross didn't take control of Cross Industries until 2021. But someone at that company wanted your father's patents badly enough to commit murder. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Elena, I think Adrian found out about you because of your inheritance. This isn't a coincidence, it's a long-term plan. Elena's mind raced back through their relationship, searching for signs she'd missed. Their first meeting at the charity gala. Adrian's interest in her father's work. The way he'd pushed for a quick engagement. The business trip to San Francisco, where Dr. Chen had approached her. The conference, she said suddenly. Adrian didn't take me to San Francisco for moral support. He took me because he knew you'd be there. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. I'd been trying to reach you for months, but your contact information was private. When I saw the engagement announcement, I knew I had to find a way to warn you. Warn me about what? Roberto hid something before he died. Something that proves Cross Industries was behind the patent theft. He told me he was going to expose them, but he died before he could follow through. Dr. Chen reached into her purse and pulled out a small silver key. He gave me this the last time we spoke. Said if anything happened to him, I should make sure you got it. Elena stared at the key. It looked old, antique even. What does it open? I don't know, but Roberto said it would lead you to the truth about everything. Dr. Chen pressed the key into Elena's palm. He also said that when the time came, you'd know exactly where to look. Before Elena could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Just thinking about you. Can't sleep knowing that in 12 hours, you'll be mine forever. Red heart. The casual possessiveness in his words made her skin crawl. Mine forever. Not we'll be married, or we'll be together. She would belong to him. Dr. Chen, Elena said slowly, there's something else. I heard a voice memo today. Adrian accidentally sent it to me. He was talking about my inheritance, about how marrying me would give him access to my father's patents. But he mentioned details I never told him about. How could he know so much about my father's work? Dr. Chen's face went pale. Elena, you need to leave. Tonight. If Adrian realizes you know the truth. He won't hurt me. We're getting married tomorrow. He needs me alive to transfer the assets. You don't understand. Dr. Chen gripped Elena's wrist urgently. I did some research after Roberto died. There have been 3 other cases in the past decade. Young women who inherited valuable intellectual property, who married wealthy men and then died in accidents within a year of their weddings. All of their assets transferred to their husbands' companies. The room started spinning. Elena gripped the edge of the table, fighting nausea. You're saying Adrian has done this before? I'm saying someone has. And Cross Industries acquired patents from all 3 of those women's estates. Elena's phone rang. Adrian's name flashed on the screen, and both women froze. Answer it, Dr. Chen whispered. Act normal. Elena's hand shook as she swiped to accept the call. Hi, Adrian. Elena, sweetheart, are you okay? You sound strange. Just tired. Long day with all the wedding preparations. Where are you? I tried calling your hotel room, but there was no answer. Elena's blood turned to ice. He was checking up on her. I'm having a quick drink with Sarah. You know, last night of freedom and all that. There was a pause that lasted a beat too long. At the hotel bar? Yes. The lie came smoothly, but Elena could hear her own pulse thundering in her ears. That's funny. I'm actually in the lobby right now. I wanted to surprise you with flowers. But I don't see you anywhere. Elena's eyes met Dr. Chen's across the table. The older woman was already reaching for her purse, fear written across her face. Oh, we went up to Sarah's room, Elena said quickly. The bar was too crowded. Another pause. What room is Sarah staying in? Elena's mind went blank. She had no idea which room Sarah was in, and Adrian would know she was lying the moment she gave him a number. Actually, she said, forcing a laugh, we just decided to go for a walk instead. You know how Sarah is, she needed fresh air. Elena. Adrian's voice had changed, becoming sharper, more focused. Where are you really? Dr. Chin was already standing, motioning urgently for Elena to follow her toward the back exit of the bar. I told you, I'm with Sarah. Sarah is having dinner with your mother at Casa Lucia. I just called the restaurant to send them champagne. Adrian's voice was dangerously quiet now. So I'll ask you one more time, Elena. Where are you? Elena hung up and ran. Dr. Chin led her through the hotel's back corridors, moving with surprising speed for a woman in her 60s. There's a service elevator, she panted. We can get to the parking garage without going through the lobby. He knows, Elena gasped, her wedding heels clicking against the marble floor. He knows I'm not where I said I'd be. Elena, listen to me carefully. You cannot go back to your hotel tonight. You cannot marry him tomorrow. This man has killed before, and he will kill again. They reached the service elevator, and Dr. Chun jabbed the button repeatedly. I have a friend who works for the FBI. Agent Marcus Rivera. He's been investigating cross industries for money laundering, but he could never find enough evidence. If we can figure out what your father's key opens. The elevator arrived with a soft ding, and they stepped inside. Elena's mind was reeling, trying to process everything she'd learned in the past hour. Her father had been murdered. Adrian was likely a serial killer. And tomorrow, she was supposed to walk down an aisle and legally bind herself to him forever. The key, she said suddenly, pulling it out of her purse. My father said I'd know where to look. Dr. Chin, did he have an office? Somewhere he worked from home. Roberto never worked from home. He was paranoid about security. Everything was at the lab. Dr. Chin paused as the elevator reached the parking level. Wait, there was one place. He had a storage unit where he kept old research files. He said it was his backup plan in case anything ever happened to the lab. Elena's phone started ringing again. Adrian's name flashed insistently on the screen. Don't answer it, Dr. Chin warned. We need to get you somewhere safe first. But Elena was staring at the key in her palm, remembering something her father used to say when she was little. When you're looking for something important, Mija, sometimes you have to go back to where it all began. Where it all began. Elena's breath caught. Not his lab, not a storage unit. Her father's study in their old house. The house her mother had sold 3 years ago after Elena graduated college. But before the sale, Elena had been tasked with cleaning out her father's things. She'd found a small safe hidden behind his diplomas, but she'd never been able to open it. Her mother had assumed it was empty and hadn't bothered to have a locksmith look at it. Dr. Chun, Elena said urgently, do you know who bought my family's house on Maple Street? I have no idea. Why? Elena's phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. This time it wasn't Adrian, it was her mother. She answered without thinking. Mom. Elena, thank God. Adrian is here looking for you. He seems very concerned. He said you sounded upset on the phone, and then stopped answering his calls. Carmen's voice carried that note of maternal worry mixed with social anxiety. Where are you, Mija? He's asking to speak with you. Elena could hear Adrian's voice in the background, smooth and concerned. Carmen, I'm just worried about her. Pre-wedding stress can be overwhelming, and I want to make sure she's okay. Mom, Elena said carefully, don't tell him where I am. I can't explain right now, but it's important. Elena, what's wrong? You're scaring me. I'm fine, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? There was a pause, then Carmen's voice came back, quieter. Of course, Mija. Always. Tell Adrian I went to bed early and asked not to be disturbed. Tell him I'll see him at the altar tomorrow. Elena hung up before her mother could respond. Dr. Chun was watching her with a mixture of admiration and terror. You're really going to do this, Dr. Chun said. You're going to try to find whatever your father hid. I have to. Elena looked down at the key again, then back at Dr. Chun. But I can't do it alone. Do you know any private investigators? Someone who could help me figure out who owns my old house now. Dr. Chun was quiet for a moment, then reached for her phone. Actually, I might know someone better than a private investigator. Agent Rivera, the FBI agent I mentioned. He owes me a favor, and he's been looking for a way to get inside Cross Industries for years. Will he help us tonight? Elena, if what we suspect is true, you're not just exposing Adrian's lies about your relationship. You're potentially solving multiple murders and stopping him from killing again. Dr. Chin was already dialing. I think Agent Rivera will be very interested in what you have to say. As Dr. Chin made the call, Elena stared at her reflection in the elevator's polished doors. Less than 6 hours ago, she'd been trying on her wedding dress, nervous but excited about her future. Now she was planning to break into her childhood home with an FBI agent to find evidence that her fiancé was a murderer. The woman staring back at her from the elevator doors looked like a stranger. Harder, more determined, almost dangerous. Elena realized that this woman had been hiding inside her all along, waiting for the moment when everything she believed about her life turned out to be a lie. "Agent Rivera will meet us at the house in an hour," Dr. Chen said, hanging up. "But Elena, once we do this, there's no going back. If we find what we're looking for, Adrian Cross will know you're not the naive woman he thought he was marrying." Elena thought about the voice memo, about Adrian's casual laughter as he discussed acquiring her life like a piece of property. She thought about her father, brilliant and kind, dying alone because he'd tried to protect his work from people like Adrian. "Good," she said firmly. "Let him find out exactly who he's dealing with." Her phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Adrian. "Elena, I'm worried about you. Please call me back. I love you." Elena deleted the message without reading it twice. The man who sent that text had never loved her. But he was about to learn that the woman he'd tried to deceive was much more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. As they walked toward Dr. Chen's car, Elena made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, instead of walking down an aisle toward Adrian Cross, she was going to walk into FBI headquarters with evidence that would destroy him. The only question was whether they'd find what they were looking for before Adrian realized she was no longer the woman he thought he'd trapped. Agent Marcus Rivera was nothing like Elena had expected. When Dr. Chen had mentioned an FBI agent, Elena had pictured someone older, more bureaucratic. Instead, the man waiting for them outside her childhood home looked like he was barely 30, with dark hair and intense brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Dr. Chen," he said, stepping out of an unmarked sedan. "And you must be Elena Vasquez." His handshake was firm, professional, but Elena caught him studying her face with the same careful attention he'd probably give a crime scene. "Agent Rivera, thank you for meeting us so late. Marcus is fine. And you're not late, you're right on time. I've been watching Cross Industries for 3 years, waiting for someone like you to come forward." Elena looked up at the house where she'd grown up, feeling a strange mixture of nostalgia and dread. The new owners had painted it sage green instead of the warm yellow her mother had chosen, and they'd replaced her father's beloved rose garden with modern landscaping. But the bones of the house were the same: the wraparound porch where she'd done homework on summer evenings, the bay window of her father's study where she'd seen his light burning late into the night. "The current owners are traveling in Europe," Marcus said, following her gaze. "According to property records, they'll be gone for another 2 weeks. But Elena, I need to be clear about something. If we go in there and find evidence, it has to be obtained legally or it won't hold up in court." "What does that mean?" "It means you need to get permission from the owners to enter the house. Or," Marcus paused, looking at her carefully, "you need to convince me that you have reason to believe evidence of a federal crime is hidden inside and time is of the essence." Dr. Chen stepped forward. "Marcus, Elena is supposed to marry Adrian Cross in less than 10 hours. If we're right about him, she could be dead within a year. That's not enough for a warrant, Margaret. Not without more concrete evidence." Elena's phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Mija, Adrian is very upset. He says you're not answering his calls and he's worried something is wrong. He's asking me for Sarah's room number. What should I tell him?" Elena's stomach dropped. If Adrian went to Sarah's room and found her friend asleep, alone, he'd know Elena had lied about being with her. They were running out of time. "Agent Rivera, Marcus," she said urgently. "What if I told you that Adrian Cross has detailed knowledge of my father's patents that he couldn't have obtained legally? What if I played you a recording of him discussing plans to steal my inheritance through marriage?" Marcus's expression sharpened. "You have a recording?" Elena pulled out her phone and played the voice memo that had started this nightmare. As Adrian's voice filled the quiet street, discussing her like a business acquisition, she watched Marcus's face change from professional skepticism to genuine alarm. "Jesus," he breathed when the recording ended. "Elena, this isn't just fraud. If Dr. Chen is right about your father's death, then we need to find whatever he hid before Adrian realizes I know the truth." Elena held up the key Dr. Chen had given her. "My father told Dr. Chen I'd know where to look. This house is the only place that makes sense." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, weighing something in his mind. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but we do this fast and we do it clean. If we find anything, we document everything properly. Elena's hands shook as she led them around to the back of the house. The spare key her family had always hidden under the third porch step was gone, but the kitchen window that had never latched properly was still there. Marcus boosted her up, and she slipped inside, her heart pounding as muscle memory guided her through the familiar space. The house felt different with someone else's furniture, someone else's life filling the rooms. But when she opened the front door to let Marcus and Dr. Chen inside, the smell hit her. Faint traces of her mother's cooking, her father's cologne, the lavender sachets that had always been tucked into closets. For a moment, she was 17 again, calling out, "I'm home," as she dropped her backpack by the door. "Elena?" Marcus's voice brought her back to the present. "Where was your father's study?" She led them down the hallway, past family photos that had been replaced with generic art, past the living room where she'd watched movies with her parents every Friday night. The study door was closed, and for a ridiculous moment Elena hesitated, as if her father might still be inside, working late into the evening like he always had. The room had been converted into a home office for the new owners, but the built-in bookshelves were the same, and the diploma wall where her father had hung his achievements was now covered with someone else's certificates and awards. Elena walked straight to the corner where her father's PhD from MIT had hung, running her hands along the wall. "There," she said, finding the almost invisible seam in the wallpaper. "Help me move this." Marcus and Dr. Chen helped her carefully peel back a section of wallpaper, revealing a small safe built into the wall. It was exactly as Elena remembered, about the size of a shoebox, with an old-fashioned lock that looked like it belonged on an antique jewelry box. "The key," Dr. Chen whispered. Elena's hands trembled as she fitted the small silver key into the lock. It turned with a soft click, and the safe door swung open. Inside were 3 items: a thick manila envelope, a small digital recorder, and a photograph. Elena picked up the photo first and nearly dropped it. It showed her father shaking hands with a man she didn't recognize, but in the background, clearly visible, was a younger version of Adrian Cross. The timestamp on the photo read March 15th, 2019, 3 days before her father died. "That's impossible," she breathed. "Adrian told me he'd never met my father." Marcus was already examining the envelope. "Elena, there are documents in here that look like they predate your father's death. Financial records, patent applications, correspondence." He looked up at her grimly. "And several of these have Adrian Cross's signature on them." Dr. Chen picked up the digital recorder with shaking hands. "Roberto always said he'd leave us a message if something happened to him." She pressed play, and Elena's father's voice filled the room, warm, familiar, alive. Elena sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the sound she'd thought she'd never hear again. "If you're listening to this, then something has happened to me, and Elena has finally found what I left for her." Roberto's voice was calm, but Elena could hear the underlying tension. "My daughter, if this is you, I need you to know that everything I did was to protect you and your future. But I'm afraid I may have made things worse." The recording crackled slightly, then continued. 3 months ago, I was approached by a company called Meridian Acquisitions. They wanted to license my cancer treatment patents, and their offer was substantial, life-changing. But when I investigated further, I discovered that Meridian was a shell company owned by Cross Industries. Elena's heart stopped. Her father had known about Adrian's company years before she'd ever met him. The young man they sent to negotiate with me was Adrian Cross himself. Charming, intelligent, persistent. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, in using the patents to help people. But then I started noticing irregularities in the paperwork. Clauses that would give Cross Industries complete control over my research, not just licensing rights. When I confronted Adrian about it, he became different. Threatening. Marcus was taking notes, his expression grim. That's when I hired a private investigator to look into Cross Industries' other acquisitions. What I found, Roberto's voice broke slightly. "Elena, there have been other researchers, other inventors, people who refused to sell their patents to Cross Industries, who died shortly afterwards in accidents. Their work was acquired by the company posthumously, usually through marriages to family members or business partnerships that transferred the assets." Elena felt sick. Dad knew. He knew what Adrian was planning. "Adrian made me an offer I couldn't refuse: marry my daughter, gain access to the patents through legal inheritance. He showed me photos of Elena, details about her life, her education, her career. He'd been researching our family for months. When I refused, he told me that he could arrange for Elena to meet him by coincidence, that he could make her fall in love with him whether I cooperated or not. The room fell silent except for the sound of Elena's ragged breathing. I tried to go to the police, but Cross Industries has connections everywhere. Powerful friends. So I gathered evidence instead. Everything is in this safe, Elena. Financial records proving the patent theft, documentation of the other murders, communication between Adrian and his accomplices. Roberto's voice grew stronger. But Mija, if you're hearing this, it means I failed to protect you. It means Adrian Cross has found you, just like he promised he would. Elena's phone started ringing. Adrian's name flashed on the screen, and all three of them froze. Don't answer it, Marcus said quietly. But the phone kept ringing, and when it finally stopped, it immediately started again. He knows, Elena whispered. Somehow, he knows I'm not where I said I'd be. Dr. Chin was pulling more documents from the envelope. Elena, look at this. It's a copy of a marriage contract. It's already filled out with your name and Adrian's, but the date is wrong. It's dated for 6 months ago. Elena snatched the document, scanning it frantically. It looked official, complete with notary stamps and witness signatures. According to the paperwork, she and Adrian had been legally married half a year ago. That's impossible. We're not married. The wedding is tomorrow. Unless it's not a wedding, Marcus said grimly. Elena, if this document is real and legally binding, tomorrow's ceremony would just be for show. You'd already be his wife, which means your assets would already belong to him under marriage laws. Elena's phone buzzed with a text. Elena, I know you're not with Sarah. Your mother is worried sick. Where are you? I'm coming to find you. Then another. We need to talk. Now. And another. You can't hide from me forever. I know you better than you know yourself. The messages kept coming, each one more threatening than the last, until Elena finally turned her phone off with shaking hands. We have enough, Marcus said, carefully placing the documents back in the envelope. Elena, this evidence could put Adrian Cross away for life. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. No. Elena stood up, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. If we run now, he'll disappear. He'll destroy evidence, pay people off, start over somewhere else with someone else. And he'll keep killing people. Elena, this man has murdered multiple people to steal their work. He's not going to just let you walk away. I'm not walking away. Elena looked at her father's photo, at the evidence of Adrian's crimes scattered across the desk. I'm going to that wedding tomorrow. I'm going to let him think he's won. And then I'm going to destroy him. Marcus stared at her like she'd lost her mind. That's suicide. If he suspects, you know. He won't suspect anything, because I'm going to give him exactly what he expects. A frightened, confused woman who had pre-wedding jitters but came to her senses. Elena's voice grew stronger with each word. Dr. Chun, you said there were other women. Other victims. How many families never got justice because Adrian was too smart, too connected, too careful? Elena, your father died trying to stop this man. Don't throw your life away for revenge. This isn't revenge. This is justice. Elena looked at both of them. And I won't be alone. Marcus, how long would it take to set up surveillance at the wedding venue? To record everything that happens? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Elena, what you're suggesting is incredibly dangerous. If Adrian realizes you're wearing a wire, then you'll have his confession on tape when he tries to kill me. The room fell silent. Outside, Elena could hear a car engine growing closer. All three of them moved to the window, peering through the blinds. A black sedan was pulling up in front of the house. Adrian's car. How did he find us? Dr. Chen whispered. Elena's blood turned to ice as she realized the truth. My phone. Even turned off, they can track the GPS. Marcus was already moving. Back door. Now. But as they crept toward the rear of the house, Elena saw headlights in the backyard as well. 2 more cars blocking their escape route. Upstairs, Marcus hissed, drawing his weapon. Elena, call 911. My phone's off. Use mine. He thrust his phone into her hands. Tell them federal agents need backup at this address. As Elena dialed, she could hear car doors slamming outside, footsteps on the front porch. Through the window, she saw Adrian's silhouette approaching the front door, flanked by 2 larger men she didn't recognize. The front door handle turned. Someone had picked the lock. Elena, Adrian's voice called from downstairs, calm and reasonable. I know you're here. Your GPS signal led me right to you. We need to talk. Elena's hands shook as she whispered their location to the 911 dispatcher. Marcus was positioned at the top of the stairs, his weapon trained on the hallway below. Elena, sweetheart, you're scaring me. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it together. That's what marriage is about, facing problems as a team. His footsteps were on the stairs now, coming closer. I found your friend Dr. Chen's car outside. And I know Agent Rivera is with you. We've been watching him for months. Adrian's voice was getting closer, almost conversational. Elena, did you really think the FBI could protect you from me? I have contacts at every level of law enforcement. Elena realized with growing horror that Adrian wasn't just a killer. He was connected to a network of corruption that went deeper than she'd imagined. But none of that matters, Adrian continued, his footsteps reaching the top of the stairs. Because in a few hours, you're going to marry me. And then this will all be over. The study door exploded inward, and Adrian Cross stepped into the room, flanked by his men. But instead of looking angry or threatening, he was smiling. The same warm, loving smile that had made Elena fall in love with him in the first place. Hello, my beautiful bride, he said calmly, as if finding her in her childhood home with FBI evidence spread across the desk was the most natural thing in the world. I think we need to have a conversation about what happens next. Elena realized that everything she thought she knew about Adrian Cross, including how dangerous he was, had been just another lie. The real monster was standing in front of her now, and he wasn't planning to let any of them leave that house alive. Dr. Chen, Adrian said pleasantly, not even glancing at Marcus's weapon trained on him. Right on schedule. Elena's blood turned to ice as she watched Dr. Chen step away from her and Marcus, moving toward Adrian with the ease of someone rejoining an old friend. Margaret, Elena's voice came out as barely a whisper. What's happening? Dr. Chen's expression shifted, the maternal concern she'd worn all evening melting away to reveal something colder, more calculating. I'm sorry, Elena. I really am. But this was always the plan. The betrayal hit Elena like a physical blow. You've been working with him. All along. Not all along, Dr. Chen said, her voice losing the warmth that had made Elena trust her so completely. But for the past 3 years, yes. Ever since Adrian made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Marcus was still holding his weapon, but Elena could see the confusion in his eyes. Margaret, what the hell is going on? You came to me. You asked for help. I came to you because Adrian needed to know exactly how much the FBI suspected about Cross Industries. You've been feeding us information for months without realizing it. Dr. Chen pulled a small device from her purse, something that looked like a phone but was clearly more sophisticated. Every conversation we've had, every piece of evidence you thought you were gathering, Adrian has known about all of it. Elena felt the world tilting around her. The conference in San Francisco, you approaching me there, was carefully orchestrated. Adrian needed you to trust someone outside his immediate circle, someone who could guide you to tonight. Dr. Chen's smile was almost pitying. Elena, did you really think that voice memo was sent to you by accident? Adrian is many things, but careless isn't one of them. The realization crashed over Elena like a wave. You wanted me to hear it. You wanted me to find out about his plan. We needed you to discover the truth in a way that felt authentic. If Adrian had simply confessed his feelings for you, you might have been suspicious. But overhearing a private conversation, finding evidence yourself, that felt real, didn't it? Elena's legs gave out, and she sank onto the desk chair. Everything, the voice memo, Dr. Chen's convenient appearance in her life, even finding the evidence in her father's safe. It had all been manipulation. Why? What's the point of all this elaborate deception? Adrian stepped forward, and Elena noticed for the first time that he wasn't wearing a wedding tuxedo. Instead, he was dressed in dark clothes that made him look like a completely different person. Harder, more dangerous. Because Elena, my darling, the truth is so much more complex than you could imagine. He pulled out a tablet and set it on the desk in front of her. The screen showed a live video feed. Elena's mother and Sarah, tied to chairs in what looked like a warehouse. Mom, Elena gasped, lunging toward the screen. They're safe, Adrian said calmly. For now. But their continued safety depends entirely on your cooperation over the next few hours. Marcus was backing toward the window, his weapon still drawn but clearly realizing he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Elena, we need to get out of here. Agent Rivera, Adrian said without turning around. I wouldn't recommend trying to leave. My associates outside have instructions to shoot anyone who exits this house without my permission. And before you consider calling for backup, you should know that your 911 call was redirected to one of our people. No one is coming to help you." Elena stared at the video feed, watching her mother struggle against her restraints. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. What this entire relationship has been building toward." Adrian moved closer, and Elena could see something almost tender in his eyes. A genuine emotion that made everything even more terrifying. "Elena, you need to understand something. Everything I told you about my feelings was true. I do love you. I've loved you since the moment I first saw your photograph 3 years ago." 3 years. Elena's voice was barely audible. "But we only met 18 months ago. We only met in person 18 months ago. But I've been watching you, learning about you, falling in love with you for much longer than that." Adrian reached out to touch her face, and Elena flinched away. "Your father wasn't the target, Elena. He never was. You were." Dr. Chen was watching this exchange with something that looked almost like regret. "Elena, your father's patents were valuable, yes. But they're nothing compared to what you inherited without knowing it." "What are you talking about?" Adrian pulled another document from his jacket, something that looked official, covered in legal seals. "Elena, your father Roberto Vasquez wasn't your biological father." The words hit Elena like a slap. "That's impossible. Your mother had an affair 28 years ago. With my father, Richard Cross." Adrian's voice was gentle, almost apologetic. "Elena, you're my half-sister. And under the terms of our father's will, you inherited 50% of Cross Industries the moment you turned 25. Elena couldn't breathe. The room was spinning around her, and she gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling. "You're lying. I have DNA tests, birth records, our father's original will, everything you need to verify the truth." Adrian knelt beside her chair, his voice soft and urgent. "Elena, for the past 5 years, I've been illegally controlling assets that legally belong to you. The patents, the company, everything. Half of it has been yours since your 25th birthday." "Then why?" Elena's voice broke. "Why the elaborate deception? Why not just tell me the truth?" "Because our fathers will came with conditions. The inheritance could only be claimed through marriage to another Cross family member, or through a business partnership that required." Adrian paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Required the elimination of any conflicting claims to the estate." Elena felt sick. "Roberto. You killed Roberto because he was my legal father. I killed Roberto because he was trying to prevent you from claiming your birthright." Adrian's voice hardened. "He knew the truth about your parentage, Elena. He'd known since the day you were born. And when I approached him 3 years ago to explain your inheritance, he refused to let me contact you." Dr. Chen stepped forward. "Elena, Roberto hired me to help him hide the evidence of your true parentage. He was planning to destroy all the documentation so you'd never learn about your inheritance." "He was protecting me," Elena whispered. "He was stealing from you," Adrian corrected firmly. "Elena, you are one of the wealthiest women in America, and the man you called father was going to let you live your entire life as a freelance writer making $40,000 a year." Elena's mind was reeling. "The other women, the other murders you told me about, were real," Dr. Chen said. "But they weren't Adrian's victims. They were women who'd inherited valuable assets and were being manipulated by other people, other companies. Adrian has been trying to stop those murders, not commit them. The shell companies, the patent theft, were my attempts to gather evidence against the real killers," Adrian said. "Elena, I've spent the past 5 years building a case against the people who've been murdering heirs and heiresses to steal their inheritances. Cross Industries isn't the villain in this story. We're the ones trying to stop the real villains." Elena looked around the room wildly, trying to find something solid to hold on to in a world that had just been turned completely upside down. "Marcus, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you knew about this." But when she turned to look at the FBI agent, he was gone. The window was open, and she could hear shouting from outside, men's voices, the sound of car engines starting. "Agent Rivera was never FBI," Dr. Chen said quietly. "He's been working for the organization that's been targeting heiresses. Elena, tonight was supposed to be the night they eliminated you and framed Adrian for your murder." Adrian moved to the window, speaking quietly into a radio. "Rivera's running. Do we have him contained?" "Adrian," Elena said, her voice hollow. "If everything you're telling me is true, then why didn't you just tell me from the beginning? Why the lies, the manipulation, the fake relationship?" Adrian turned back to her, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw genuine vulnerability in his expression. Because I was terrified you'd run. Elena, I've been in love with you for 3 years, but I'm also the man who killed the only father you ever knew. How do you tell someone that? How do you ask someone to trust you after that? Elena stared at the video feed showing her mother and Sarah. Everything she'd believed about her life, her family, her relationship with Adrian. All of it had been built on lies. But now she didn't know which lies were meant to protect her and which were meant to destroy her. The wedding tomorrow, she said slowly. Is it real? It's real, Adrian confirmed. But Elena, you need to understand, if you don't marry me, if you don't officially claim your inheritance through our family connection, the people who killed those other women will come for you next. And unlike me, they won't hesitate to hurt the people you love. As if summoned by his words, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Elena Cross. You have 6 hours to transfer your inheritance to the Meridian Group, or your mother and best friend will join your father. The wedding is off. You now know too much to be allowed to live. Elena looked up at Adrian, seeing him clearly for what felt like the first time. They know. The real killers. They know I found out about the inheritance. Yes. Which means we're out of time for deception. Adrian's voice was grim. Elena, I need you to make a choice. You can trust me, the man who killed Roberto to protect your future, but who genuinely loves you. Or you can try to run and let the people who sent that text hunt you down. Elena's hands were shaking as she looked around the room. Dr. Chun, who'd betrayed her trust but who might actually be trying to save her life. Adrian, who'd built their entire relationship on lies, but who might be the only person standing between her and real killers. And somewhere outside, the people who wanted her dead were closing in. There's something else, Dr. Chen said quietly. Elena, the reason Adrian was so desperate to marry you quickly, the reason he's been so careful about this timeline. Your 28th birthday is next week. According to your father's will, if you don't claim your inheritance by then, it reverts entirely to Adrian. Forever. Elena felt the last piece of solid ground disappear beneath her feet. So either way, you get everything. Either way, you stay alive, Adrian corrected. Elena, if I wanted your money more than I wanted you, I would have let the Meridian Group kill you 3 years ago and inherited everything then. Instead, I've spent 3 years trying to find a way to give you your birthright and keep you safe. Outside, Elena could hear vehicles approaching. Multiple engines moving fast. They're coming, Adrian said, checking his radio again. Elena, I need an answer. Do you trust me enough to let me get you out of here alive? Or do you want to face the people who sent that text message on your own? Elena looked at the video feed one more time. Her mother's terrified face, Sarah struggling against her restraints. Whatever the truth was about Adrian, about her father, about her inheritance, the people she loved were in immediate danger. What do you need me to do? Adrian smiled, and for just a moment, he looked like the man she'd fallen in love with. I need you to marry me, Elena. Tonight. Right now. Before they can stop us. Elena's heart pounded as she realized the choice she was making. In the space of 2 hours, she'd gone from planning to expose Adrian as a killer to agreeing to marry him in her childhood home while armed men hunted them. But as the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder, Elena realized that the most dangerous thing she could do was trust anyone, including herself. To know the difference between salvation and destruction. Dr. Chun, she said quietly, do you have the marriage license? Dr. Chun pulled an official document from her purse, already filled out and notarized. Elena, are you sure about this? Elena looked at Adrian, at the man who might be her salvation or her doom, and made the choice that would determine whether she lived to see another day. I'm sure, she said, and meant it. But as Adrian took her hand and Dr. Chin began reading the marriage ceremony, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was still missing something crucial. Something that would change everything about this moment. Outside, the vehicles had stopped. Car doors were slamming. Men were shouting orders. And Elena Vasquez was about to become Elena Cross, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, until death did them part. Which, given the circumstances, might be sooner than either of them expected. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Dr. Chin said, her voice barely audible over the sound of boots on the front porch below. Elena stared at the hastily signed marriage certificate, her name next to Adrian's in shaky handwriting. Mrs. Elena Cross. The name that was supposed to save her life might have just sealed her death warrant. Elena, Adrian said urgently, we need to move. Now. But before anyone could move, Elena's phone rang. Not a text this time. An actual call from the same unknown number that had sent the threatening message. "Answer it," Adrian said grimly. "Put it on speaker." Elena's hands shook as she accepted the call. "Hello. Congratulations on your wedding, Mrs. Cross." The voice was electronically distorted, impossible to identify. "How romantic, a ceremony in your childhood home, surrounded by the evidence of your father's murder." Elena's blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" "Someone who's been watching you much longer than your new husband has." "Elena, you've just made a very expensive mistake." Adrian grabbed the phone. "She's legally married now. The inheritance is protected under family succession laws. You have no claim to Cross Industries' assets." The distorted voice laughed, a sound like broken glass. "Adrian, you always were too clever for your own good. Did you really think we didn't know about the paternity fraud?" Elena felt the room spin around her. "What paternity fraud? Your husband hasn't told you the best part yet, has he?" "Elena, Richard Cross wasn't your father either. The DNA tests Adrian showed you were fabricated. You have no biological connection to the Cross family at all." Elena stared at Adrian, watching his face go pale. "That's impossible. Adrian has been lying to you about everything. Your parentage, your inheritance, even your father's murder. Roberto Vasquez wasn't killed to protect your birthright. He was killed because he discovered that Cross Industries has been systematically murdering patent holders and stealing their work for over a decade." Elena backed away from Adrian, her mind reeling. "You said you loved me. You said you were protecting me." "I do love you," Adrian said desperately. "Elena, whatever they're telling you. The marriage you just performed is legally meaningless," the voice continued. "Dr. Chen isn't licensed to officiate weddings in this state. She's a research scientist, not a justice of the peace. But thank you for the ceremony. It's given us exactly what we needed." Elena looked at Dr. Chen, who was avoiding her eyes. "What did you give them?" The voice answered before Dr. Chen could respond. "Your fingerprints on the marriage certificate, your voice on recording agreeing to the marriage, and your presence at the scene where we're about to find the bodies of FBI agent Marcus Rivera and Dr. Margaret Chen." Elena's phone screen changed to a live video feed. She could see herself standing in her father's study, but the angle was wrong. It was being filmed from outside the house, through the window. "Elena," the voice said calmly, "you're going to walk out of that house in exactly 60 seconds. You're going to get into the black SUV waiting at the curb. And you're going to disappear forever. Because as of tonight, Elena Vasquez is dead, and Elena Cross never legally existed. And if I don't..." The camera angle shifted to show another feed, her mother and Sarah, but now Elena could see they weren't just restrained. There were explosive devices attached to their chairs, red digital displays counting down. 47 minutes, the voice said. "That's how long your mother and best friend have left to live unless you cooperate. The timer is connected to your GPS signal. If you're not at our location within 45 minutes, or if you try to contact law enforcement, they die." Elena looked around the room desperately. Adrian was speaking rapidly into his radio, but she could see the defeat in his eyes. Dr. Chen was backing toward the corner, her face a mask of terror that looked genuine for the first time all evening. "Adrian," Elena said quietly, "how many people have you really killed?" "Elena, everything I told you about loving you was true. Everything else." He looked at her with something that might have been genuine remorse. "Everything else was me trying to find a way to save your life without destroying mine." The truth hit Elena like a physical blow. There is no inheritance. There never was. Cross Industries is worth billions, Elena. But none of it was ever yours. Adrian moved closer, and she could see desperation in his eyes. "The only way I could protect you from the people who wanted you dead was to make you valuable to them alive. The marriage, the inheritance claims, it was all supposed to buy us time to find another solution." "What people? Who wants me dead?" Dr. Chen spoke for the first time since the ceremony, her voice barely a whisper. "Elena, your father Roberto discovered something before he died. Something about Cross Industries that goes beyond patent theft." "What?" "We're not just stealing intellectual property," Adrian said grimly. "We're testing it. On people. Without their knowledge or consent." Elena's legs gave out, and she collapsed into the desk chair. "What are you talking about? Your father's cancer treatment patents. They weren't just theoretical research. Cross Industries has been using them in unauthorized human trials for the past 5 years. Roberto found out because he was monitoring patent usage through academic databases. Elena's mind flashed back to conversations with her father in his final months. His increasing paranoia, his questions about her health, his insistence that she get regular medical checkups from specific doctors. "The conference in San Francisco," she said slowly. "The pharmaceutical conference where I met Dr. Chen. That wasn't random, was it?" Dr. Chen shook her head. "Elena, you've been part of a clinical trial for one of your father's treatments since you were 23 years old. The fertility clinic you went to for routine checkups, the vitamin supplements your doctor prescribed, even the coffee shop you go to every morning. All of it has been designed to expose you to experimental medications." Elena felt like she was drowning. "You've been experimenting on me for 5 years?" "We've been trying to save your life for 5 years, Adrian corrected. "Elena, you have a genetic predisposition to the same cancer that killed your father. The treatments we've been giving you have been preventing its development. Without my consent, because we knew you'd refuse." Adrian exploded, his calm facade finally cracking. "Elena, your father found out about the trial because the early results were so promising. But instead of being grateful that we were saving his daughter's life, he threatened to expose everything. He was going to destroy research that could save millions of people just to protect your right to make an uninformed decision about your own health." Elena stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time the man she'd married. Not a romantic hero or a calculating villain, but something more complex and more frightening. Someone who genuinely believed his actions were justified. "The other women," she said. "The other murders you told me about. They were test subjects too. They were women whose families tried to remove them from trials that were keeping them alive," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Elena, Cross Industries isn't the villain in this story. We're the only thing standing between you and a death sentence." Elena's phone buzzed with another message. 38 minutes. "Your mother is asking for you. She wants to know why you're not coming to save her." Elena looked at the video feed, showing her mother's terrified face. Carmen was saying something, but there was no audio. Elena could read her lips. "Please, Mija. Help me." "Elena," Adrian said urgently, "there's something else you need to know. The people who have your mother and Sarah, they're not trying to steal Cross Industries. They're trying to destroy it. Because our research is on the verge of eliminating several types of cancer entirely." "I don't understand." "Think about it, Elena. How much money do pharmaceutical companies make treating cancer? How much do hospitals make? Insurance companies? Entire industries are built on people staying sick just long enough to be profitable patients." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. "You're saying they want to kill me to stop cancer research?" "I'm saying they want to kill you because you're living proof that the research works. Elena, you should have developed stage 4 pancreatic cancer 2 years ago. The same disease that killed your father. Instead, you're completely healthy." Elena's hands went to her stomach involuntarily. She thought about all the minor health issues she'd had over the past few years: nausea, fatigue, digestive problems. Her doctor had told her it was stress, poor diet, the normal wear and tear of modern life. "The symptoms I've been having were your body processing the experimental treatments," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Elena, you're not just a test subject. You're our most successful case study. Your survival proves that we can prevent cancer before it develops, rather than just treating it after diagnosis." Elena's phone rang again. The same distorted voice, but this time there was urgency in the electronic modulation. "Elena, you have 35 minutes to reach our location. But I have a new offer for you." "What?" "Your mother and friend are both healthy women in their 40s and 50s. Perfect candidates for our own research trials. If you agree to cooperate with us, to testify that Cross Industries experimented on you without consent, we'll ensure that Carmen and Sarah receive the same life-saving treatments you've been getting." Elena looked at Adrian, seeing the horror in his eyes. "And if I don't cooperate? Then we'll make sure that Carmen and Sarah develop the same cancer that should have killed you. We have ways of accelerating genetic predispositions, Elena. Very unpleasant ways." The room fell silent except for the sound of Elena's ragged breathing. Outside, she could hear more vehicles arriving. Through the window, she could see armed figures taking positions around the house. "How do I know you'll keep your word about my mother and Sarah?" "You don't. But Elena, you need to understand something about your husband and Dr. Chen. They've been keeping you alive by keeping you ignorant. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life as someone's unknowing test subject?" Elena looked around the room, at Adrian, whose love for her might be real but whose methods were unforgivable, at Dr. Chen, who had saved her life while systematically lying to her, at the evidence of her father's murder scattered across the desk. "Elena," Adrian said quietly, "whatever you decide, I want you to know that everything I felt for you was real. But I can't promise you that choosing me means choosing freedom, or safety, or even survival." Elena's phone showed another countdown, 32 minutes. She realized that there was no good choice left. Every option led to betrayal, to death, to the sacrifice of something she couldn't bear to lose. She could save her mother and Sarah by destroying the research that was keeping her alive. She could trust Adrian and let the people she loved die. Or she could try to run and watch everyone she cared about pay the price for her cowardice. For the first time in her life, Elena understood what her father had felt in his final days. The crushing weight of trying to protect the people you love when every choice you make puts them in more danger. "Adrian," she said finally, "if I go with them, what happens to you?" "They'll kill me." "But Elena, they're going to kill me anyway. The only question is whether you'll be alive to remember that someone loved you enough to die for you." Elena closed her eyes, trying to find some clarity in the chaos. When she opened them again, she'd made her decision. But it wasn't a choice between Adrian and his enemies, between love and survival, between truth and deception. It was something much more dangerous than any of them had anticipated. "Dr. Chun," Elena said calmly, "call them back. Tell them I'm ready to cooperate. But I have one condition." "Elena, no," Adrian said desperately. "You don't understand what you're." "I understand perfectly." Elena looked at him with a steadiness that surprised them both. "Adrian, you've been treating me like I'm too naive to handle the truth about my own life. They've been treating me like I'm too weak to make my own choices. But neither of you have considered the possibility that Elena Vasquez might be more dangerous than either Elena Cross or your anonymous test subject." She picked up her father's photograph from the desk, the one showing him with the young Adrian Cross, and smiled for the first time in hours. It's time everyone found out exactly who they've been underestimating. As Elena walked toward the door, Adrian realized that the woman he'd fallen in love with, the woman he'd tried to save through lies and manipulation and careful control, was about to become someone none of them had ever met before. Someone who might be the most dangerous person in the room. Elena walked down the stairs of her childhood home with a calmness that felt foreign in her own body. Behind her, she could hear Adrian and Dr. Chun arguing in hushed, desperate voices, but their words seemed to come from another world, one where Elena Vasquez still existed. The woman descending these stairs was someone else entirely. At the bottom of the staircase, she paused in front of the family portrait that the new owners had never bothered to remove. Elena at 16, braces gleaming, standing between Roberto and Carmen Vasquez at her high school graduation. The three of them looked so happy, so normal, so blissfully unaware that their lives were built on a foundation of lies that would eventually destroy them all. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered to Roberto's image. "But you were wrong. Sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to become someone they won't recognize." Elena opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The street was lined with black SUVs, their engines running, their windows tinted so dark they looked like holes in reality. Men in tactical gear stood at strategic positions, their weapons trained on the house but lowered slightly in a gesture of temporary truce. In the center of it all stood a woman Elena recognized but had never met in person, Dr. Victoria Harrington, the former head of the FDA's Experimental Drug Approval Committee. Elena knew her face from news articles about pharmaceutical scandals, congressional hearings about medical ethics, investigative reports about corruption in government oversight. "Elena," Dr. Harrington said warmly, approaching with her hands visible but not raised. "Thank you for being reasonable. Your mother and Sarah are waiting for you." "Where?" "Close by. But first, we need to discuss the terms of your cooperation." Dr. Harrington gestured toward one of the SUVs. "Shall we?" Elena didn't move. "No. We discuss terms here, in the open, where everyone can hear what you're really asking me to do." Dr. Harrington's smile flickered slightly. "Elena, I understand you're frightened, but—" "I'm not frightened," Elena interrupted, her voice carrying across the quiet street. "I'm angry. And there's a difference." Behind her, Elena could hear Adrian and Dr. Chin emerging from the house. She didn't turn around, but she could feel Adrian's presence like a physical weight at her back. "Dr. Harrington," Elena continued, "before we discuss my cooperation, I need you to explain something to me. How long have you been planning my murder?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Dr. Harrington's expression shifted, becoming more cautious. Elena, no one wants to hurt you. We want to help you understand what Cross Industries has done to you. What Cross Industries has done is keep me alive for 5 years without my knowledge or consent. Elena's voice grew stronger. What you've done is threaten to murder my family unless I help you destroy research that could save millions of lives. Which one of us sounds like the villain in this story? Dr. Harrington glanced around at her men, and Elena caught the subtle hand signal she made. Whatever this conversation was leading to, it was about to end badly. Elena, Dr. Harrington said carefully, you've been brainwashed by people who have been experimenting on you. You can't trust your own judgment right now. You're right, Elena said, surprising everyone including herself. I can't trust my own judgment. So I'm not going to. Elena pulled out her phone and held it up for everyone to see. On the screen was a live stream feed showing her standing on the porch, surrounded by armed figures, with Adrian and Dr. Chen visible behind her. What I'm going to trust, Elena continued, is the judgment of the 23,000 people who are currently watching this live stream on my social media accounts. The live stream that's been running for the past 10 minutes, capturing everything that's been said. Dr. Harrington's face went white. Elena, what have you done? I've given myself the one thing that Adrian and you, and even my father never thought to offer me. The truth, and the freedom to choose what to do with it. Elena looked directly into her phone camera. My name is Elena Vasquez. 5 years ago, my father Roberto Vasquez was murdered by Cross Industries because he discovered they were conducting unauthorized medical experiments. For the past 5 years, Cross Industries has been using me as an unknowing test subject for experimental cancer treatments. Behind her, she heard Adrian say her name, but she didn't turn around. The woman standing behind me is Dr. Victoria Harrington, former FDA official, who is currently threatening to murder my mother and best friend unless I agree to help her destroy medical research that could eliminate cancer. Elena's voice remained calm, conversational. In approximately 27 minutes, if I don't arrive at her location, she's going to execute 2 innocent women to cover up her own involvement in what she claims to be fighting against. Elena could see the comment count on her live stream climbing rapidly. Hundreds, then thousands of people sharing and reposting her feed across every social media platform. Elena, you're making a mistake, Dr. Harrington said urgently. You don't understand the full scope of what's happening here. Then explain it. To me and to the 34,000 people who are watching right now. Elena held the phone steady, keeping Dr. Harrington in frame. Tell them why you think murdering cancer researchers is the moral choice. Dr. Harrington looked around desperately at her men, but Elena could see the calculation in her eyes. Whatever plan they'd had for tonight, it hadn't accounted for being broadcast live to an audience that was growing by the minute. Turn off the camera, Elena. Now. No. Turn it off, or we kill your mother. Elena felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. Do it. The words came out so calmly that even Elena was surprised by them. Dr. Harrington stared at her in shock. What did you say? I said do it. Kill my mother. Right here, live on camera, in front of 47,000 witnesses. Elena's voice never wavered. Show everyone exactly who you are and what you're fighting for. Elena, Adrian's voice was barely audible behind her. You can't mean that. Elena finally turned around to look at him, and she could see the horror in his eyes. Adrian, you've spent 5 years trying to save my life without asking me if I wanted to be saved. She spent the last hour threatening to kill my family to force me to make choices I never should have to make. Elena looked back at Dr. Harrington. But neither of you ever considered that I might choose something else entirely. What are you talking about? Elena held up her phone again, checking the viewer count. 53,000 people are watching this conversation. By morning, millions of people will have seen this footage. Dr. Harrington, if you kill my mother, you'll be doing it in front of the largest audience in the history of pharmaceutical crime. Elena could see Dr. Harrington's men becoming restless, looking to their leader for guidance that wasn't coming. And if you don't kill my mother, Elena continued, then everyone watching will know that your threats were empty, that you're not as powerful as you pretend to be, and that the research you're trying to destroy is valuable enough that you're willing to commit murder to stop it. Dr. Harrington's phone was buzzing constantly. Her superiors, Elena realized, watching the live stream and realizing that their careful plan was unraveling in real time. Elena, Dr. Harrington said desperately, you're destroying yourself. Do you understand that? Without our protection, Cross Industries will kill you within a week. Maybe, Elena said. But if they do, it'll be on camera too. Because from now on, everything in my life is going to be documented, streamed, and shared. I'm making myself too public to disappear quietly. Elena turned to address her phone camera directly. To everyone watching, I'm about to do something that might get me killed. But I need you to remember what you've seen here tonight. I need you to share this video, to demand investigations, to make noise if something happens to me or to the people I love. Elena walked down the porch steps, directly toward Dr. Harrington. Behind her, she could hear Adrian calling her name, but she didn't stop. Dr. Harrington, I'm going to give you a choice now. You can kill me here in front of 58,000 people and become the face of everything that's wrong with pharmaceutical corruption. Or you can let me walk away, and we can both see what happens when someone refuses to be anyone's victim. Elena stopped just a few feet away from Dr. Harrington, close enough to see the sweat on the older woman's forehead, the way her hands were shaking slightly. What's it going to be? Dr. Harrington stared at her for a long moment, then spoke into her radio. Release the hostages. Elena felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly knocked her down, but she kept her expression steady for the camera. Thank you. And Dr. Harrington? The next time you want to threaten someone's family to get what you want, you might want to make sure they're not willing to call your bluff. Dr. Harrington was already backing toward her SUV, her men following. Elena, this isn't over. You have no idea what you've just started. Yes, I do, Elena said calmly. I've started telling the truth in public. Apparently, that's more terrifying to you than any weapon. As the SUVs pulled away, Elena finally allowed herself to turn around and look at Adrian. He was standing on the porch, staring at her like he'd never seen her before. Elena, he said quietly, what you just did was choose myself, she finished. For the first time in my life, Adrian, I chose what I wanted instead of letting other people choose for me. Elena looked down at her phone. The live stream was still running, the viewer count still climbing. In the chat, people were demanding to know more about Cross Industries, about Dr. Harrington, about the unauthorized medical trials. Adrian, she said, I have a question for you. Anything. Do you love me enough to tell the truth? All of it? Live on camera, to 64,000 people. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, then walked down the steps to stand beside her. Yes. Elena angled the phone to include both of them in the frame. Then let's give them a story they'll never forget. As Adrian began speaking, about Cross Industries, about the unauthorized trials, about his genuine love for a woman he'd tried to save by controlling her, Elena realized that the most dangerous thing she could do wasn't choosing Adrian or Dr. Harrington. It was choosing to trust the world with the truth and see what happened next. For the first time in years, Elena Vasquez felt truly free. But as the night wore on and her story spread across the internet, she would discover that freedom came with a price she hadn't expected to pay. And that the people who wanted her dead had been planning for this moment much longer than she'd realized. As Adrian began speaking to the camera, Elena watched the comment count explode across her phone screen. Viewers were sharing the stream faster than she could track, and news outlets were already picking up the story. But what made her heart race wasn't the attention. It was the private message that had just appeared from an account she recognized. Dad's alive. Warehouse District. Come alone. M. Elena's hands started shaking as she stared at the message. M. Roberto had always called her M for Mija, a private nickname between father and daughter. Adrian, she interrupted, her voice cutting through his confession about Cross Industries' illegal trials. We need to go. Now. Elena, what's wrong? Adrian looked at her with concern, but she was already moving toward the street. My father. He's alive. Elena held up the phone, showing Adrian the message. That's impossible. Elena, I was there when Roberto died. I saw. You saw what someone wanted you to see. Elena's mind was racing, pieces clicking together with terrifying clarity. Adrian, what if everything we've believed about tonight has been wrong? What if this wasn't about stopping you or protecting me? What are you talking about? Elena looked at her phone again. The live stream was still running, but now she noticed something that made her blood turn cold. The viewer count was exactly the same as it had been 30 seconds ago. Not growing, not shrinking, frozen. Adrian, how many people do you think are actually watching this stream? Elena, there are over 60,000. The count stopped changing 5 minutes ago. Elena's voice was tight with growing realization. Adrian, what if this entire live stream has been a fabrication? What if no one is actually watching us right now? Adrian stared at her phone screen, and she watched understanding dawn on his face. Elena, that's not possible. We saw Dr. Harrington react to the camera. We saw her react to what she thought was a camera. But Adrian, I've been a science writer for 7 years. I know how to spot manipulated data. Elena pulled up the technical details of her stream. Look at this. The bandwidth usage, the server connections, none of this is real. Someone has been spoofing my social media accounts. Elena's phone buzzed with another message. Stop analyzing the stream and come to the warehouse. You have 10 minutes before I disappear forever. Dad. Elena, even if Roberto is alive, this could be a trap. Everything tonight has been a trap, Elena said grimly. But Adrian, what if the trap wasn't set by Dr. Harrington or your enemies at Cross Industries? What if it was set by someone who wanted all of us in one place, acting out our roles perfectly? Elena looked back at the house where they'd found her father's evidence, where Dr. Chin had betrayed her, where she'd married Adrian in a ceremony that was legally meaningless. Adrian, when Dr. Chin showed you those financial documents linking Cross Industries to my father's death, did you verify them independently? Elena, there wasn't time. When Dr. Harrington showed up here with her men, claiming to represent some pharmaceutical conspiracy, did you recognize any of them from your actual business dealings? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. No, I didn't. And when that voice called threatening my mother and Sarah, did it sound like anyone you've ever worked with before? Elena, what are you saying? Elena looked at her phone one more time, then turned it off completely. I'm saying that someone has been orchestrating this entire evening. Someone who knew exactly how you'd react to threats against my life, exactly how I'd react to learning about your deception, exactly how Dr. Chin would play her role. Elena started walking toward the warehouse district, and Adrian fell into step beside her. But who? Who could have planned something this elaborate? Someone who's been watching all of us for years. Someone who knew about my father's research, your illegal trials, Dr. Harrington's corruption, even Dr. Chen's willingness to betray people for money. Elena's voice grew steadier with each step. Someone who needed us all to reveal our secrets in what we thought was a public forum, but was actually a controlled environment. As they walked through the darkened streets, Elena's mind kept working through the implications. Adrian, the marriage certificate we signed tonight. Dr. Chin said it was legally meaningless because she's not licensed to officiate. But what if that wasn't true? What if Dr. Chin actually is licensed? And what if our marriage is legally binding? Elena, why would that matter? Because if I'm legally married to you, and if something happens to me, you inherit everything I own, including something I never told you about. Adrian stopped walking. What are you talking about? My father didn't just develop cancer treatment patents, Adrian. Before he died, or before he disappeared, he also developed something else. Something he made me promise to never tell anyone about. Elena pulled a small flash drive from her pocket. Genetic modification protocols that could eliminate hereditary diseases entirely. Not just treat them, eliminate them from the human genome. Elena could see the understanding dawning in Adrian's eyes. Elena, do you have any idea what that would be worth? Trillions of dollars. And the complete transformation of human medicine. Elena looked at the warehouse district ahead of them. Adrian, what if tonight wasn't about exposing Cross Industries or stopping pharmaceutical corruption? What if it was about getting me to willingly transfer the most valuable intellectual property in human history to someone through marriage? They'd reached the warehouse Roberto's message had specified. The building looked abandoned, but Elena could see light coming from the upper windows. Elena, Adrian said quietly, if your father is really alive, if he's been orchestrating this whole thing, then the man I thought I knew died 5 years ago, and someone else has been pulling the strings ever since. Elena looked at Adrian one last time. Adrian, before we go in there, I need to ask you something. And I need you to tell me the truth. Anything. Do you actually love me? Or have you been playing a role this entire time too? Adrian was quiet for a moment, then reached for her hand. Elena, everything I've told you about my feelings has been true. But everything I've told you about my reasons for acting on those feelings has been a lie. What do you mean? I didn't start the illegal trials to save your life. I started them because someone paid me to. Someone who claimed they were trying to prevent your death, but who I now realize might have been trying to ensure you'd be valuable enough to steal from. Elena felt the last piece of solid ground disappear beneath her feet. Someone hired you to experiment on me? Elena, I've been as manipulated as you have. The difference is that somewhere along the way, I actually fell in love with you. Which means that for the first time in 5 years, I'm going to do something because I want to, not because someone is paying me to. Elena looked up at the warehouse, at the light in the windows where her father was supposedly waiting. What are you going to do? I'm going to help you find out who's been controlling our lives. And then I'm going to help you destroy them. Elena squeezed Adrian's hand, realizing that for the first time since this nightmare began, she was standing next to someone whose motives she actually understood. They climbed the fire escape to the upper level of the warehouse. Through the windows, Elena could see a figure sitting at a desk, back turned to them. The silhouette was familiar. The same height and build as her father, the same way of holding his shoulders when he was concentrating. Elena pushed open the window and climbed inside, Adrian right behind her. "Hello, Mija," Roberto Vasquez said without turning around. "You're right on time." Elena's heart clenched at the sound of his voice, exactly as she remembered it, warm and loving and completely alive. "Dad!" Roberto turned around, and Elena saw that 5 years had aged him more than they should have. His hair was completely gray now, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But his smile was the same, the smile that had made her feel safe and loved every day of her childhood. "Elena, my brilliant daughter. You figured it out faster than I expected." "Figured what out?" Roberto gestured around the warehouse, and Elena realized for the first time that the entire space was set up like a command center. Banks of monitors showed feeds from locations all over the city. The house where they'd just been, the hotel where this had all started, even the warehouse where her mother and Sarah had supposedly been held hostage. All of it, Mija. Every moment of tonight has been carefully orchestrated. Dr. Chun, Dr. Harrington, the fake livestream, even Mr. Cross's convenient arrival at your hotel. Roberto looked at Adrian with something that might have been approval. Though I have to admit, his genuine feelings for you were an unexpected variable. Elena stared at the monitors, watching feeds of herself and Adrian from earlier in the evening. "You've been watching us all night. I've been watching you for 5 years, Elena. Making sure you were safe, making sure the treatments were working, making sure that when the time came, you'd be strong enough to handle the truth." "What truth?" Roberto pulled out a chair for her, and Elena sat down numbly. "The truth about why I had to disappear. The truth about what I discovered before my supposed death. And the truth about what you inherited that's more valuable than any patent or any company." Roberto turned to one of the monitors and pulled up a genetic analysis that Elena recognized, her own DNA profile. "Elena, the experimental treatments you've been receiving haven't just been preventing cancer. They've been activating dormant genetic sequences that I programmed into your DNA before you were born." Elena's world tilted. "What are you talking about?" "Genetic modification, Mija. You're not just my daughter. You're the first successful human genetic enhancement in history. Your intelligence, your intuition, your ability to see patterns that others miss, none of that is natural. It's all by design." Elena stood up abruptly, backing away from the monitors. "That's impossible. The intellectual property you inherited isn't just cancer treatments, Elena. It's the complete genetic blueprint for enhancing human cognitive ability. You're not just the owner of that research, you're the proof that it works." Elena looked at Adrian, seeing her own horror reflected in his eyes. "Dad, what have you done to me? I've given you the tools to change the world, Elena. But more importantly, I've given you the choice of how to use them." Roberto stood up, moving toward a wall safe Elena hadn't noticed before. "Which brings us to why I staged tonight's elaborate performance." He opened the safe and pulled out a device that looked like a sophisticated computer tablet. "Elena, everything you experienced tonight, the betrayals, the threats, the impossible choices, all of it was designed to help you understand who you really are when everything you believe about yourself is stripped away." "I don't understand." "Tonight, you discovered that the man you loved had been lying to you. You learned that people you trusted had been experimenting on you. You found out that your entire life had been built on deception. And what did you do?" Elena thought back through the evening. The voice memo, Dr. Chen's betrayal, Adrian's confession, her confrontation with Dr. Harrington. "I chose to tell the truth, even when it was dangerous." "Exactly. Elena, genetic enhancement is useless if the person receiving it doesn't have the moral character to use their abilities responsibly. Tonight was your final test." Roberto handed her the tablet. "This contains the complete genetic modification protocols that could transform human intelligence worldwide. It also contains evidence of everyone who's been trying to steal that research from you, including some very powerful people who will stop at nothing to control this technology." Elena stared at the device in her hands. Why are you giving this to me now? Because tomorrow, Elena, the whole world is going to know who you really are. The fake live stream you created tonight was actually being recorded and transmitted to every major news outlet in the world. By morning, your story will be everywhere. Elena felt her knees go weak. You mean people really were watching? Over 3 million people watched your confrontation with Dr. Harrington. Your decision to livestream the truth has already started a global conversation about pharmaceutical corruption, unauthorized human experimentation, and genetic enhancement. Roberto moved to another monitor and pulled up news feeds from around the world. Elena could see her own face on screens everywhere. News anchors discussing her story, scientists debating the implications of genetic modification, politicians calling for investigations into cross-industries. Elena, Roberto said gently, you're about to become the most famous woman in the world. And the most hunted. Everyone who wants to control genetic enhancement technology is going to come for you. Elena looked at Adrian, then back at her father. What am I supposed to do? Whatever you choose, Mija. You have the intelligence to understand the implications of this technology, the moral character to use it responsibly, and now the global platform to make sure it's used to help people instead of exploit them. Elena held up the tablet. And if I decide that humans aren't ready for this kind of technology, then you destroy it. All of it. The research, the protocols, even the enhancements in your own DNA. Roberto's voice was calm, accepting. Elena, I didn't create you to be my legacy. I created you to be your own person, with the tools to make choices I could never make. Elena looked around the warehouse one more time, at the monitors showing her story spreading across the world, at the father who'd sacrificed everything to give her this choice, at the man who'd fallen in love with her without knowing what she really was. Dad, she said finally, there's something I need to tell you. What's that, Mija? Elena smiled, the first genuine smile she'd felt all night. I already knew. Roberto stared at her in shock. What? I've known about the genetic modifications since I was 25. I've known about the illegal trials since I was 26. And I've been building my own investigation into genetic enhancement corruption for the past 2 years. Elena pulled out her phone and showed Roberto a different app. Not social media, but a secure communication platform. Dad, when you taught me to think critically and question everything, you didn't account for the possibility that I'd question you too. Roberto sat down heavily. Elena, what are you saying? I'm saying that the woman who walked into that hotel room tonight wasn't naive Elena Vasquez, confused and heartbroken by her fiancé's betrayal. She was someone who'd been waiting for the right moment to force everyone involved in this conspiracy into the open. Elena looked at Adrian. Including you. Adrian's face went pale. Elena, everything I told you about my feelings was true, but everything you told me about your level of involvement was a lie. Elena's voice was steady, almost gentle. Adrian, I know about the other test subjects. I know about the ones who died because their genetic modifications were unstable. And I know that you've been trying to perfect the process using me as your control subject. Elena turned back to Roberto. And Dad, I know that you didn't fake your death to protect me. You faked it because you realized that genetic enhancement was too dangerous to release into the world, but you couldn't bring yourself to destroy your life's work. The warehouse fell silent except for the hum of electronic equipment. So, Elena continued, here's what's going to happen next. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to hold a press conference. I'm going to tell the world everything about genetic enhancement, about the illegal trials, about the conspiracy to control this technology. Elena, Roberto said desperately, if you do that. If I do that, then humanity gets to decide collectively whether we're ready for genetic enhancement. Instead of a small group of powerful people making that choice for everyone else. Elena looked at the tablet in her hands one more time, then made a decision that would change the course of human history. But first, she said, I'm going to give every person on Earth the same choice you gave me. Elena connected the tablet to Roberto's communication system and began uploading the genetic modification protocols to every scientific database, every medical journal, and every research institution in the world. Elena, no. Roberto lunged toward the computer, but Adrian caught his arm. Let her do it, Adrian said quietly. She's right. This choice belongs to everyone. As the upload completed, Elena realized that she'd just done something that would make her the most hunted person on Earth, but also the most protected. Because you can't suppress information that everyone already has. Elena, Roberto said, staring at the completed upload. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Yes, Elena said calmly. I've given the world the tools to evolve beyond the need for people like Dr. Harrington and Dr. Chen and anyone else who thinks they should control human genetic destiny. Elena looked at Adrian one last time. And I've made sure that no one will ever again have to choose between love and truth, between survival and freedom, between protecting the people they care about and doing what's right. As sirens began wailing in the distance, law enforcement, Elena realized, finally responding to the chaos of the evening. She walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, for the first time in her life, Elena Vasquez had chosen her own destiny. And she was ready for whatever came next. 6 months later, Elena stood in front of the United Nations General Assembly, watching 200 world leaders debate the future of human genetic enhancement. On the screen behind her, data streams showed real-time updates from research facilities around the globe. Teams of scientists working openly on the protocols she'd released, their findings shared instantly with the entire world. Dr. Vasquez, the Secretary General said, you've been remarkably silent during this debate. As the woman who gave this technology to the world, what do you believe humanity should do with it? Elena looked out at the assembly, then at the cameras broadcasting this moment to every corner of the earth. 6 months ago, she'd been a freelance science writer planning her wedding. Today, she was being called the most influential person of the 21st century. I believe, Elena said calmly, that the question isn't what humanity should do with genetic enhancement. The question is what genetic enhancement will do to humanity. And the only way to find out is together. She clicked to the next slide of her presentation, showing a world map dotted with thousands of research locations. In the past 6 months, we've seen something unprecedented in scientific history. Open-source genetic research, with every discovery immediately shared with everyone else. No patents, no corporate control, no government secrets. Elena paused, remembering the chaos of those first weeks after her revelation. The assassination attempts, the government raids, the corporate lawsuits that had tried to stop the spread of information that was already everywhere. The result, Elena continued, has been more progress in 6 months than we saw in the previous 50 years of closed, competitive research. We've identified genetic markers for over 300 hereditary diseases. We've developed treatment protocols that could eliminate childhood cancer entirely. And we've done it without any single entity controlling the technology. In the audience, Elena could see Adrian watching from the diplomatic section. 6 months of congressional hearings, FBI investigations, and international tribunals had ultimately cleared him of the most serious charges. Mostly because Elena herself had testified that his illegal trials had saved her life. But Cross Industries had been dissolved, its assets distributed to medical research foundations around the world. Their relationship had been more complicated to resolve. How do you love someone who saved your life through deception? How do you trust someone who'd been paid to experiment on you, even if they'd eventually chosen you over the money? The answer, Elena had discovered, was carefully and honestly, and with full acknowledgement that some forms of damage couldn't be entirely repaired. Dr. Vasquez, a delegate from Switzerland, was speaking now. There are still those who argue that genetic enhancement should be restricted, controlled by international oversight. How do you respond to concerns about inequality, about the technology being misused? Elena smiled, thinking of all the people who'd asked her this question over the past 6 months. Politicians who wanted to regulate the technology they couldn't control, corporations furious about profits they couldn't capture, activists worried about advantages they couldn't access. The same way I responded 6 months ago when people tried to control this technology in secret, Elena said. By making sure everyone has access to the same information, the same tools, and the same choice. Elena clicked to her final slide, a photograph of herself at age 5, standing in her father's laboratory, watching him work with the same fascination that had shaped her entire life. When I was a child, my father taught me that science isn't about creating power, it's about sharing knowledge. Every discovery belongs to all of humanity, not just to the people smart enough or rich enough or connected enough to access it. The assembly hall was completely quiet now, 200 world leaders hanging on her words. Genetic enhancement isn't going away. We can't uninvent this technology, just like we couldn't uninvent nuclear physics or artificial intelligence or any other breakthrough that changed human civilization. Elena's voice grew stronger. Our choice isn't whether to allow genetic enhancement. Our choice is whether to do it openly, with global collaboration and ethical oversight, or to drive it underground where it will be controlled by the same people who tried to control it 6 months ago. Elena looked directly into the main camera. And I've already made my choice. The session ended with the usual diplomatic non-commitments and procedural delays, but Elena knew the real decision had been made months ago when she'd uploaded the protocols. The world was moving forward with genetic enhancement, whether governments approved or not. As delegates filed out of the assembly hall, Elena gathered her papers and prepared for the next part of her day. A video call with research teams in Lagos, Mumbai, and Sao Paulo, where some of the most innovative work was happening. Elena. She turned to find Adrian approaching, looking different than he had 6 months ago. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by the casual clothes of someone who spent more time in laboratories than boardrooms. His work with the International Genetic Research Collaborative, the organization Elena had helped establish to coordinate global enhancement research, had given him a purpose that felt more genuine than anything he'd done at Cross Industries. How did it feel? He asked. Addressing the UN for the final time? Elena considered the question. Like ending one chapter and starting another. They walked out of the assembly hall together, past protesters holding signs both supporting and condemning genetic enhancement, past reporters shouting questions about Elena's own enhancement status, past security personnel who'd become a permanent fixture in her life. Elena, Adrian said as they reached the street, I need to tell you something. She stopped walking, recognizing the tone in his voice. Over the past 6 months, she'd learned to read Adrian's expressions with the precision that only came from rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. The research team in Geneva thinks they've found something. A way to reverse genetic modifications entirely. Elena felt her heart skip. Reverse them? All of them, including the enhancements your father programmed into your DNA. Adrian's voice was careful, neutral. If you wanted to, you could become normal. Completely unmodified human genetics. Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching the crowds of people moving through New York City. Some of them carrying genetic modifications they didn't know about, others actively choosing to enhance themselves, all of them part of a species in transition. Would you still love me? She asked. If I was just Elena Vasquez, science writer, instead of Elena Vasquez, genetically enhanced catalyst for human evolution? Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her fully. Elena, I fell in love with the woman who chose to livestream the truth when she could have chosen safety. I fell in love with the woman who chose to trust the world with dangerous knowledge instead of letting powerful people control it. None of that had anything to do with your genetic modifications. Elena studied his face, seeing the honesty there that had taken her months to learn to trust again. Besides, Adrian added with a small smile, if you reversed your enhancements, you'd still be smarter than most people. You'd just have to work a little harder for it. Elena laughed, the first completely uninhibited laugh she'd felt in months. Adrian, are you asking me to marry you again? Because the first ceremony didn't exactly work out. I'm asking you to choose me again. Every day. The same way I choose you. Adrian reached for her hand. Elena, we could go anywhere, do anything. You've changed the world. You don't owe it anything else. Elena looked around at the city, at the people, at the world that was struggling to adapt to the changes she'd unleashed. Actually, I think I owe it everything. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. Mija, saw your speech on the news. Your father would be proud. Are you coming home for dinner Sunday? Sarah wants to cook. Elena smiled, thinking of the family dinners that had become a monthly tradition. Her mother, Sarah, sometimes Adrian when Elena felt ready for that level of domestic normalcy. Roberto had chosen to disappear again after that night in the warehouse, leaving behind only a letter explaining that he needed to find out who he was when he wasn't trying to control his daughter's destiny. Elena understood. She was still figuring out who she was when she wasn't trying to save the world. Adrian, she said, what if I told you I don't want to reverse my genetic modifications? Then I'd ask why. Because I think humanity is going to need people who can think differently, who can see patterns that others miss, who can help navigate what comes next. Elena looked at him seriously. What if my father was right about genetic enhancement being necessary for human survival, but wrong about who should control it? What are you thinking? Elena pulled out her phone and showed Adrian a message she'd received that morning from a research team in Antarctica. Climate change, Adrian. Ocean acidification, atmospheric degradation, ecosystem collapse. What if the real reason we need genetic enhancement isn't to treat diseases, but to help humans survive on a planet we've made increasingly hostile to human life? Adrian stared at the data on her phone. Elena, you're talking about adapting human genetics to environmental changes. I'm talking about giving humanity the tools to evolve as fast as our environment is changing. Elena's voice grew excited as the pieces clicked together in her mind. Adrian, what if everything we've done so far has just been preparation? What if the real work is just beginning? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, then started laughing. Elena, 6 months ago you were planning to be a suburban housewife. Now you're talking about directing human evolution to save the species. 6 months ago, I didn't know who I really was. Elena looked at the UN building behind them, then at the city sprawling in all directions. Now I do. Elena's phone rang, a video call from the research team in Mumbai. She could see excited faces on the screen, scientists holding up data sheets and talking rapidly in 3 different languages. Dr. Vasquez, one of them called out. We've had a breakthrough. The modifications aren't just enhancing cognitive function. They're allowing people to process environmental toxins that would normally be fatal. Elena, we think genetic enhancement might be the key to human survival on a changing planet. Elena looked at Adrian, seeing her own excitement reflected in his eyes. Dr. Patel, Elena said into the phone, send me everything. Every protocol, every result, every theory. We're going to need a much bigger research collaborative than we thought. As Elena ended the call and looked around at the city, she realized that the voice memo that had shattered her world 6 months ago had actually been the beginning of something much larger than she'd imagined. Not just the end of one deception, but the start of humanity's next evolutionary chapter. Adrian, she said, I have one more question for you. What's that? Are you ready to help me change the world again? Adrian smiled and took her hand. Elena, I'm ready for whatever comes next. As they walked through the city together, Elena felt the weight of the future settling around her, not as a burden, but as a possibility. 6 months ago, she'd been someone who things happened to. Today, she was someone who made things happen. And tomorrow, she would help humanity decide what it wanted to become. Elena pulled out her phone one more time and opened a new social media post. Not a live stream this time, but a simple message to the millions of people who'd been following her story since that night in her childhood home. 6 months ago, I learned that everything I believed about my life was a lie. Today, I'm asking humanity to help me discover what truths we can build together. The next phase of human evolution starts now. Who's ready to be part of it? Elena hit post and watched as responses began flooding in from every corner of the globe. Scientists eager to collaborate, activists demanding oversight, families worried about their children's futures, young people excited about possibilities their grandparents never imagined. The conversation that would shape humanity's next chapter had begun. And Elena Vasquez, genetically enhanced, globally influential, and finally free to choose her own destiny, was ready to help guide it forward. What did this story teach you about the power of choosing truth over comfort, transparency over control, and love over fear? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world.